Oh, hello and welcome. I thought we'd have a little bit of fun looking at various minerals. And today, let's start with one of the most fascinating of all, and that is copper. Copper, 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 and copper. So we're going to go on a little adventure looking at the role of copper in human health. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and show you how we can do a little bit of research and learn all about copper. So let's start. I'll go through a few things. Let's think about copper's role in anemia. And I'll put in here copper deficiency and anemia. Now, normally when somebody is diagnosed medically of being anemic, they are given an iron supplement. We'll deal with anemia as a separate subject at a later date, but let's talk about copper's role. Now, if you are a champion sheep breeder like Brown Trotter, who's written a book on this subject, if you have anemic sheep, you don't give them an iron supplement. You spread bluestone on the paddocks for the sheep to ingest through the grass. Bluestone, of course, is copper sulfate. So let's have a look at the role of copper. And what we will see is here. Anemia is a clinical sign of copper deficiency, and iron has been found to accumulate in the livers of copper deficient animals, indicating that copper via the copper-containing ceruloplasmin is required for iron transport to the bone marrow for red blood cell formation. So that's a little bit of information about the role of copper and anemia. Now, isn't that quite fascinating? And it just so happens when we do hair tissue mineral analyses, I would say around about 80% of the women we test have got issues to do with copper, usually a copper toxicity. And when we're talking about minerals, when we shouldn't be thinking about excesses or deficiencies, but more from a health point of view, thinking about the Goldilocks zone. There's a healthy middle ground with minerals and all nutrients for that matter. Not too much, not too little, just the Goldilocks zone. And if one has too much or too little of a nutrient, such as copper, you can get the same symptoms of a deficiency or an excess. So this is where testing is really important to determine, has this person got a copper excess or a copper deficiency? Around about, I would say about 70%, 60% of the males we test have got something dodgy going on with copper. But again, is there too much or too little? Often in males, it is too little. Can copper cause anemia? Well, the answer is yes. Yes. Without adequate amounts of bioavailable copper, and we need to determine the difference between bioavailable and biounavailable, then we will see then copper may be an issue in anemia. And you'll see other things like low blood temperature, because copper is essential for thyroid function and also for strong bones. So you'll see bone fractures, osteoporosis, arthritis, low white blood cell count, so a weak immune system, irregular heartbeat, and the loss of pigment. And yes, they do mention thyroid problems there. And you can go down further, and whenever you see NCBI, NLM, and or NIH, like National Institutes of Health or the National Congress Bibliotech, these are the published peer-reviewed studies that you can look at, and you can be pretty sure that there's a good degree of authority on these. But one thing to bear in mind when you're reading studies is that you'll always find studies that agree and disagree And what you need to do is read them carefully and make your own mind up, and do your own testing, and then use your own test results and relate them to what you see in the literature, and come to the best conclusion based on the signs and symptoms and the test results, of course. Okay, so copper deficiency, absolutely, anemia. Now, let's have a look at something else. Let's talk about cardiovascular disease. So let's, I'll type in cardiovascular disease, hey, and let's see. We'll just do disease, eh? Just to keep it wide open, and we can always narrow it later. And again, copper deficiency, high blood pressure, enhancement of inflammation throughout the body, not just the cardiovascular system, anemia, reduced blood clotting, and arteriosclerosis. And you can go into there some more detail. This is supposedly an authoritative statement from through PubMed, and I'll read something from my textbook just so that you can see. So this is my textbook by Dr. David L. Watts, and we'll have a look at copper, and I'll just bring up cardiovascular. Copper is a critical component for the integrity of the cardiovascular system. An adequate amount of copper is required to produce the necessary enzymes which maintain, among other things, the connective tissues. A roster of feared heart ailments, aneurysms, heart enlargements, heart failure, infarcts, and ischemic heart disease are known to result from copper deficiency. And while I'm at it, I'll read a little bit about cholesterol. When the body has a deficiency of copper relative to zinc, and it can be a little bit hard to figure out, there is a decrease in the formation of high-density lipoproteins, HDL, and an increase in low-density lipoproteins, LDL. HDLs are the so-called good molecules that help to fight coronary heart disease, particularly arteriosclerosis. This imbalance can lead to hardening of the arteries, regardless of total serum cholesterol or triglyceride levels. And Dr. Watts makes the point, too much copper in the system can also contribute to cardiovascular problems. And I won't go on any further, but basically, if you've got an abnormality with copper metabolism, you're a sitting duck for cardiovascular disease. Now, about 80% of us will have some degree of cardiovascular disease to deal with during our lifetime, and what is it? Something like 20% will die from it. But 80% of us will have signs and symptoms of cardiovascular disease as we get older, and that kind of fits with what I said earlier on about 80% or so of the people that we test have got something dodgy going on with copper. And by the way, hey, this is not depressing. This is exciting because it's all controllable stuff. We can do something about it. So copper in cardiovascular disease, not too much, not too little, just right. And everything from aneurysms to cholesterol issues, and that can be dealt with. And by the way, just as a matter of interest, when thyroid function declines, cholesterol goes up. So if as you get older, as happens with most of us, as our metabolism, thyroid-regulated metabolism declines, cholesterol tends to climb. It tends to climb upwards. Now, let's have a look at another. I've had just dealt with 2 cases of this today, and this is very common. Parkinson's. And so if we look at copper deficiency, copper. So copper is again a mineral that is closely associated with the onset of Parkinson's, and we will see that copper deficiency includes tremors. Now, by the way, one thing which all of us can do is you get a bottle of a plain bottle, a clear bottle, 3/4 full with water, hold it out as with a straight arm like this, and just hold it for 1 minute and take a video. And if there's any tremor, you'll notice that it'll be very hard to keep the water still in the bottle. Do that for 1 minute, then swap hands and hold it for a minute and record. And if, as fatigue sets in particularly, if there is a tremor, okay, and you'll notice shaking of the bottle, just do that and tuck that away. If there's no tremor, just tuck it away in the archives, and every year or so repeat it and see whether or not there's the development of a tremor. Now, copper deficiency is so far everybody that I have tested who has Parkinson's has low copper, very low copper, and it's very common in endurance athletes or people who are under enormous amounts of physical and mental stress. And I can think of a number of athletes who have done extraordinary feats of endurance, amazing performances, high octane. Think of the stress that their bodies are under, and think of the psychological stress of lining up for an Olympic event with 100,000 fans and millions of others beaming in from by TV. Talk about stress, okay? Or think of people just in high stress jobs. Think of police officers, for example, high stress. People who are struggling with a failing business and the stress that puts them under, let alone doing things like doing enormous volumes of cycling and running and, multi-sports and marathons and ultra marathons and climbing mountains and so on. Guess what it does? It depletes copper. And copper depletion is associated with Parkinson's. And Parkinson's, by the way, is remarkably like shell shock, isn't it? Battle fatigue. The old digger who's been in the front lines, the trenches for too long, and ends up with shell shock. Shell shock and Parkinson's, they look exactly the same, don't they? And one thing that's really interesting, think of the typical look of somebody with Parkinson's, other than the lack of expression, is the lack of pigment, and they look so anemic. Everybody I know with Parkinson's has that pale white, ashen sort of grayish look, the bloodless look. And think of the connection between copper deficiency and tremors, and copper deficiency and pigmentation of the skin, and copper deficiency and anemia. It's an interesting connection, isn't it? Now, so if we look at copper deficiency and type in mitochondria, I'll put in Parkinson's there. Why don't we just, I'm jumping a little bit, but why not have some fun here? Okay, and what you will see is that copper deficiency is certainly associated with Parkinson's, but what we see is defects in mitochondrial function. Now, I'll just take out the Parkinson's and I'll just put in mitochondria, and I'll change that to dysfunction. Google, even though I have some issues with Google, Google's very good, but they are doing some censorship on sensitive subjects such as okay? But on these less controversial ones, there's a lot here. Yeah, so copper deficiency will result in impairment of mitochondrial function. But I should point, and mitochondria, if you don't know, the little power stations that produce energy within your cells, and basically everything to do with life, absolutely everything is to do with being able to produce energy and put it to good use for all the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of cellular functions that are taking place every second of your life, in every single, in the trillions of cells that you've got. So it's very important. And the more biologically or physiologically active the tissue, the higher the greater the concentration of mitochondria. So well-conditioned skeletal muscle, a good strong heart has high concentrations of mitochondria, and basically your liver, kidneys, the highly biologically active tissues have got high levels of mitochondria. And I forgot to mention the brain, and I guess the mitochondrial content of brains varies enormously. I don't know how many mitochondria I've got myself, but I assume there's a few there in my brain, that is. Now, so mitochondria. We should also, I'll just point out something, copper toxicity. Copper, when copper is excessive, copper is essential for mitochondrial activity, but when it's overloaded, it can be detrimental to metabolism. Now, I'll go into I'm really emphasizing this idea of a Goldilocks zone. I'm sorry, I'm being distracted. There's another ambulance rushing somebody off to the hospital. We've had 3 helicopters fly overhead so far today. We live above the hospital, and it's been unlike anything it's been out of this world. This last 12 months. The number of people being rushed to hospital. Something dodgy is going on in New Zealand, something very strange. Okay, now, so copper toxicity, copper deficiency, mitochondria don't work well, and it means that your energy supply systems become dysfunctional, and that has a knock-on effect to just about every health condition under the sun. And basically, if you haven't got healthy, strong mitochondria producing masses of energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate or ATP, basically everything's going to fall to bits ultimately, and disease will set in. Now, I'm going to just bring up another website for you, and this is HTMA Experts, which stands for Hair Tissue Mineral Analysis Experts. And they have done a lot of work on copper toxicity and health issues. And so just think of copper. Copper is it's actually quite similar to lead in properties. If you think about it, it conducts electricity, it conducts heat very well. It has a low melting point. It's heavy. And it's malleable. You can mold it very, very easily as compared to, say, steel. So copper is essential for metabolism and a number of other functions within the body. But it is, when it's excessive, it can begin to act like a heavy metal, like lead. And so let's have a look at, as they say here, high levels of copper are toxic to the body and will alter other mineral patterns, blah, blah, blah. Now, it's very difficult to assess copper in the body, and we call it hidden copper toxicity. So high levels can be stored in the tissues, but can be very difficult to pick up in normal testing. But I've got ways, and they indicate some of the ways here. This is htmaexperts.com if you want to go back to there and have a look. But there are ways that we can assess copper levels indirectly by looking at their effect on other patterns. Now, if you look at, here's a list of the common health issues and physical symptoms associated with copper toxicity, not even copper deficiency. We could come up with a big list of copper deficiency conditions as well, which I'm covering some of them today. So as we go down here, I want you to just skim them, and you will see that these are incredibly common, and they are on the increase in young people today. And a lot of the conditions like acne and aching muscles, cramps, anger and rage, and sensitivity to vitamins and minerals, but also sensitivity to other chemicals and that, autism, anxiety, arthritis, bipolar. By the way, just think of birth control use. Hey, guess what? Copper is the catalyst for the production of estrogen. And that's why the copper IUD contraceptive is effective. It tricks the body into producing, or to producing estrogen, and tricking the body into thinking it's pregnant. But too much copper ends up causing problems. Calcium bone spurs, cancer, chronic fatigue syndrome, chocolate cravings, cold hands, constipation, cysts, depression, despair, dry skin, eating disorders, fatigue, exhaustion, gum disease, gut dysbiosis, Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, headaches, migraines, heart disease, palpitations, hormone replacement therapy. Just remember that estrogen and copper are one and the same. Hypo and hypothyroidism, infertility, insomnia, low blood pressure, Lyme, brain fog, mind racing, mood swings, mononucleosis, or glandular fever alters the way the liver regulates copper. We could do a complete session on glandular fever alone, or mononucleosis caused by the Epstein-Barr virus, or there are similar infections such as cytomegalovirus. Obsessive thoughts, OCD, oppositional defiant disorder. Sounds like all my children when they were younger, but I love them, and they've all grown up now. Osteoporosis, osteopenia, PANDAS, panic attacks, paranoia, schizophrenia, PMS, postpartum depression, poor concentration, racing heart, pounding heart. God, haven't we had a lot of those lately? Seizures, spaciness, skin rashes, supersensitivity, thyroid problems, tooth decay, yeast infections, and violent behavior. Now, when you think about it, these conditions are extremely common nowadays, and they are very closely associated with female health issues. Think of Candida. Women tend to get Candida, urinary tract infections, and so on, more than men. And it's the copper connection, and the connection between copper and estrogen, and including the use of estrogen-based contraceptives or copper-based contraceptives, including various implants. Okay, so there we are, copper. Very interesting. Now, let's have a look at a couple of other things. Where am I? I just need to bring it up. Oh, there we are. Gosh, we've got another rescue helicopter just flying overhead. You may possibly hear it in the background. Yes, it is. Yep. Delivering another casualty. Even though the pandemic's over, guess what? The casualties are continuing. I wonder why. Nothing to see here. Oh, but I can see something, but I should ignore it, shouldn't I? Okay, let's type into here copper and neurotransmitters. And why don't we? How does copper toxicity affect the brain? Okay. Now, basically, copper again must be within the Goldilocks zone, and too much copper is associated with dementia. Think of Alzheimer's. Aluminium is too, by the way. Aluminium is the smoking gun, but it's more complicated than that. But as you can see here, cognitive decline with aging is not really that much of a mystery. it is a mystery if you're completely beholden to the pharmaceutical search for the cure. There's no cure, by the way, and there never will be, because these conditions are multifactorial. They're complicated, and food is the real medicine, balancing nutrients. And the beauty about it is that we have really excellent testing nowadays where we can determine what these are. However, there's no point in doing this testing if the health professional refuses to recognize the root causes. And the root causes are nutrient imbalances and deficiencies and excesses within the body, those three combinations. Okay, so copper toxicity or copper deficiency. So you will see deficiency and excess can contribute to neurodegeneration. Now, I'm going to type in copper deficiency and peripheral neuropathy. Again, this is very common, and we're seeing a lot of peripheral neuropathy over the last year or so, which and I'll get on to another aspect as well. So copper deficiency is a known cause of neurodegeneration. Okay, and you will see that that rapidly reverses with copper supplementation. Now, isn't that exciting? It's not exciting for Big Pharma, however, because copper cannot be patented, and supplementation is about $35 a month. Okay, yeah, so nobody's going to make $1 billion out of that. Now, let's type in here and demyelination, and you will see that copper deficiency can result in demyelination. Now, myelin is the outer layer of your nerves. It is kind of like the flexible plastic insulation of the wiring of your house. Now, if it becomes thin and brittle, it cracks easily and you'll get a short circuit. And so somebody with a copper deficiency or a copper excess for that matter will be prone to basically neurological degeneration. But I've got a theory that it is a factor in why some people are very vulnerable to concussions. Some people have glass jaws, others have rock jaws. By the way, I have a rock jaw. And even though I've suffered many head injuries because of the sports I do, I have never suffered a concussion, and surprisingly so. Now, so for a very strong brain, you need strong myelin outer layers of your nerves, which are very resistant to disruption, such as from a whack to the head. And also as protection against neurodegeneration that is so common as we get older. But I don't think that dementia, the dementia epidemic and so on, I think it is largely preventable, by the way. But if only we were to grasp the knowledge that is sitting here right in front of us. It's here, after this presentation. You get onto Google and do your keyword researches like I'm doing here, and it will blow your mind away, okay? It'll blow your mind away. It's all there, and you can go down and, oh, look, hey, your neurologist is reading all about this. But will your neurologist ever test you for copper? Okay. Will your neurologist ever prescribe copper or other cofactors? I don't know of a single one who ever has. Okay, and I've been doing this testing for 20 years now, and I've been in this line of nutritional medicine, 40 years actually. It's probably nearer 45. Okay, look at this: copper deficiency in utero leads to impaired neurodevelopment and neurodegeneration. Okay, doesn't sound good for babies, does it? Okay, so there's a ton of stuff here for all of these neurodegenerations. Okay, and by the way, here's a good reason for not having bariatric surgery. Now, let's move on. I'll just cover copper deficiency, and let's talk about connective tissue. I hope you're enjoying this, blowing your mind away about just one element of the universe. Now, isn't this really interesting about how you see copper and zinc regulate the cross-linking of fibers, whether they, so think of your connective tissue, your collagen tissue, made up of millions of little collagen fibers, and think of it all as being plastic. Okay, the collagen is collagen, but the collagen differentiates a little bit like plastics. So and it's determined by the cross-linking, how cross-linked they are, or whether they are like so. If they're linked that way, then they become stretchy and work a little bit like a rubber band or a trampoline bed or lycra. Whereas if it's cross-linked like so, layer and layer of cross-linking, it becomes hard and is more akin to cartilage, designed to withstand pressure and impact as opposed to stretching. So copper and zinc regulate the cross-linking of collagen, and again, not too much, not too little, in order to have like healthy skin, which is nice and flexible and doesn't prematurely turn into wrinkles, turkey necks, and sagging things that go down. I call it tired furniture syndrome, and that's when your chest sags into your drawers. Now the and you can see, like, for a strong heart, for nice strong heart valves and blood vessels that don't stretch and rupture and so on, you need a balance between zinc and copper. And so copper deficiency is associated with a whole lot of things. So, here we are. So it says copper deficiency blocks the formation of cross-links in collagen and elastin from various tissues. And it's felt that bone fragility, blah, 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 and so on. So if there's a copper deficiency or a copper excess for that matter, we will see an acceleration of arthritis and osteoporosis, the softening of the bone ends, degeneration of that, but also premature aging of the skin, wrinkling, and also tendon issues, ligament issues, and just remember that, well, your whole body's held together. Your entire structure is collagen. And if you've got abnormalities with the laying down of healthy collagen for producing the myriad of different tissues, then you're going to age prematurely, and your exercise capacity certainly will decline, and you'll be more likely to break. And when you hurt yourself, you won't heal very well. So these things are very important to bear in mind. So, again, the NCBI, NLM, NIH, the PubMeds, etc. Science Direct, by the way, is a great place for going to read up more about these, and you can go into these studies and look at them and so on, and you will see an enormous amount of information, incredible information. Now, look, there's just so much there that how on earth do you keep track of it all? Well, do your best, but just remember that I make my living out of this sort of stuff. So if you're having trouble taking this all in, that's fine. You know, educate yourself, but just you can defer to me. I've got it pretty well sussed, but just bear in mind we're always learning more. Now I'm going to just do another one. We're going to put in here copper deficiency, and let's put in cancer. Okay, just so you can see so much of this. So what we will see is that copper is linked to cancer. Okay, and copper deficiency and copper excess are unhealthy conditions to have, and it's all about, again, that Goldilocks zone. So that's why the testing is so important. Hey, I don't want you going out and buying a whole lot of copper, okay, and supplementing with copper. You need to do the testing first. Now, I'm just going to my textbook. I know this textbook so well that I can go straight to the page. So, malignancies in copper. Dr. Watts, low tissue copper levels are common with some malignancies, generally the catabolic or highly metastatic types. Patients suffering from Hodgkin's disease have an elevated iron to copper ratio, especially in their lymph nodes. Continued cancer research is discovering that some malignancy conditions step up the body's need for copper. Copper is a key component in normal cell functioning because it helps regulate cellular respiration. When researchers added copper to the diet of laboratory animals, the mineral noticeably decreased tumor growth and slowed its spread. These actions also increased the survival rate. And I could read on more, but that's again, copper is really important when it comes to the generating of cancers, but also for survival. But again, here's the really important thing. You need to test and figure out, is there too much or too little, or is it just right? And by the way, there could be other things blocking the physiological need or the physiological benefits of copper. And that can be toxins like copper, so let's just look at lead. And by the way, you'll see that lead is associated with demyelination, and part of lead's process in causing demyelination may be the blocking or antagonistic effect on copper and other minerals. So just bear that in mind. That's why the testing is really important, because what's the point of doing various nutritional therapies if somebody's got, say, lead poisoning or mercury or arsenic? And these are almost universally present in people's bodies, and you'd be surprised at the number of people who have got surprisingly high levels of toxins like arsenic, cadmium, lead, mercury, and so on. Aluminium. Aluminium's a terrible one. They're all terrible, by the way. So there we are. There's a little bit of a run through on copper. And I hope you have enjoyed this, and please follow up. Oh, by the way, just one other thing, let's put in copper. Now, this might be a good one to search, copper and demyelination, but let's go into videos and see whether, oh, yes, okay, here we are. Yes, plenty of it. So if you're more like me, a bit of a visual person, then go into the videos YouTube, which tends to censor a lot of my work over you know what, okay, but go into YouTube and the videos, and you will get some really good lectures and presentations on copper. Okay, so isn't this amazing, and isn't it incredible that these are not being you just don't hear about it medically. I find it appalling. That's one reason why I won't donate to these patient advocacy groups that are trying to raise funds for more research, because all they're looking for is another drug. We don't need another drug. What we need is to apply the knowledge that we already have here, the nutritional knowledge. And by the way, the Minister of Health, the Honourable Andrew Little, is about to introduce the Natural Health Products Bill, which is seeking to make it even more difficult. They're basically seeking to ban natural medicine, the sort of thing which I'm talking about here, where people like me will be basically put out of business, and no kidding, this is on the cards, and your only choice will be a medicine, a patent medicine, and probably an mRNA drug, which is going to play God with your DNA for every condition under the sun. So if you've got peripheral neuropathy, you'll be given an mRNA drug for that. If you've got Parkinson's, you'll be given an mRNA drug for that. If you've got osteoporosis, you get given an mRNA drug for that. And guess what? All that they will do is damage your immune system, and they won't work because, hey, if there's an imbalance between copper and zinc, or a bit of mercury or arsenic or other things like that, hey, an mRNA drug ain't gonna fix that at all. It's impossible. Okay, you can't create elements of the universe out of nothing. An mRNA drug won't do it. If these nutrients are excessive or deficient, there's only one way to correct those, and that's through dietary means, adjusting one's diet, and if necessary, some very careful supplementation. So anyway, there we go. I've had my little political rant there as well. I hope you have enjoyed this, and I will produce more. If you'd like to have more presentations like this, please leave some comments at the bottom of the article below this video, and let me know, and we'll do that. For example, why don't we do something on zinc? I think zinc would be a good one to deal with. Hey, we can even look at some of the toxic elements like cadmium, lead, arsenic. Arsenic's a good one because so much arsenic is found in New Zealand. Okay, anyway, you have a lovely day, and enjoy digesting what I've covered, and let me know if you'd like to have more. Okay, cheerio. Have a lovely time.